He was renowned as the offspring of a demon. People depicted him as a somber youth draped in a pitch-black cloak, enveloped in a foreboding crimson glow. The entire empire bestowed upon him this title due to his uncommon blood-red eyes. Those scarlet irises, akin to a reflection of blazing fire, bestowed upon him an enigmatic visage, as if he personified mystery and might. However, there existed a girl who held a different perspective. She was a young noblewoman with golden locks and vibrant azure eyes, who gazed at the young lad in astonishment upon their initial encounter. Her name was Alter Chernobog. From that moment onwards, they engaged in numerous battles, and not once did she question him. He was a noble knight, and she genuinely believed him to be a true war hero, an unwavering embodiment of the Empire's ideals. His valiant deeds on the battlefield had become an indelible part of legendary history, crafting an image of an invincible defender. Her eyes gleamed with pride as she recounted his exploits. She failed to comprehend how such an individual could be labeled as the offspring of a demon. In her eyes, he symbolized human strength and determination, rather than a curse. His decisions, even the most arduous ones, appeared to her as products of necessity and responsibility, rather than sinister manifestations of an unholy essence. However, before she could finish her thoughts, she found herself confronted by something unexpected. A surge of steel tears through her, as if her own blood had been pierced. She raised her gaze, and before her stood a knight clad in ebony armor. It was the same young man she held in such high regard. The girl collapsed to her knees, clutching her chest, and peered at him with a bewildered expression. The young man regarded her with a frigid gaze and uttered words that shattered her perception. It was likely because he was a demon. The girl could not fathom that this was truly her hero. Her mind refused to accept this reality, desperately seeking an explanation or even a justification. The sight of her killer brought forth anguish and despair, blurring the boundaries between good and evil. He then crouched down and knelt in front of the wounded girl. The knight in black armor confirmed her suspicion that he was the one responsible. He began to explain that he had always been this way, but somehow she hadn't realized it. However, there was a demon lurking over her shoulder, and it wasn't her fault for not figuring it out earlier. Alter was confused and called the knight a scoundrel. She was about to say something else, but he interrupted her. The knight asked the girl what he should do and how he could change his terrible nature. He bravely became a knight, venturing where no one else dared to go, and that was all he could do. He doubted that she could accept him. He asked her to look at the outcome of all his suffering and where it had led them. They were standing in the middle of a scorched desert, amidst a battlefield. She was on her knees, with a grievous wound in her chest, while he stood proudly, looking down at her. She thought she had fought fiercely, not for this. Had it all come to an end for them? Had they not fought on the same side? Clutching the hilt of her sword, she desperately tried to understand when everything had gone wrong. Her mind was at a standstill, trying to unravel the confusion of what had happened. She couldn't comprehend how her hero, her protector, and her ideal had become a threat. The young knight continued his speech, stating that the girl had always despised him, leaving him no choice but to end it with his own hands. He claimed that he would kill her for her lies, and it was better for him to embrace the demon he had been labeled as. Alter replied that it was indeed a lie, and the demon's nickname would haunt the knight for the rest of his life. Although she knew who he truly was, she didn't want to believe it. Perhaps it was her fault for not being able to accept it because the Estero she knew was a noble knight and protector of all men. If he truly was a demon like everyone claimed, it was a difficult truth to accept. Then these falsehoods from the humans must be true. The girl reminded herself that she too was a comrade, a knight who defended him as best she could. Ying opened his blood-red eyes in surprise, not comprehending what she was saying. The girl declared that even if she knew his true identity, her love for him would not waver. She repeated her vow to always protect him. Despite the young man's continued confusion, she assured him that if they were given another chance at life, she would never reject his dark essence. On the hushed battlefield, a solitary clang of metal echoed as the girl's knight sword slipped from her lifeless hands. The young man rushed to her side in terror, calling out her name. It was then that he realized Alter was dead. Holding her lifeless body, he lamented that he wished they had never crossed paths. If it weren't for Alter, he could have lived as a demon without regrets. Clutching her breathless form, he confessed that in that moment, he felt the same helplessness and bitterness of loss as the girl. It was as if a flood of emotions overwhelmed him with an unyielding force. The sword of the Empire, the sole Duchess of the Empire, pondered what would have happened if she had known she would meet her demise at the hands of someone she cared for. She would have never chosen this path. Walking through a grand hall bathed in moonlight, adorned with majestic arches and towering columns, she wondered if she had entered the afterlife. As she reached the end of the corridor, her gaze fell upon a painting hanging on the wall. It depicted a banquet held in honor of the princess's 7th birthday. She extended her hand to touch the canvas, and in that moment, the girl was enveloped in a golden flash, transported to a mysterious world. Alter was bewildered, unable to comprehend what was happening. Before her, the image of the royal banquet hall materialized, and she couldn't help but think that it was the debut of the young Earl of Estero. The nobles whispered behind her back, remarking that such an event was a little belated. They chatted about his crimson eyes, claiming that no one else in the empire possessed such unique eyes. They even went as far as to suggest that he was the offspring of a demon. Despite these rumors, Alter dismissed them as nonsense. She firmly believed that a person's true essence was concealed behind the veil of gossip and speculation. She preferred to judge individuals based on their actions and choices rather than giving in to empty rumors. There were also whispers that his mere presence drove people of all ages to madness. Alter wondered just how captivating he must be to inspire such tales. However, what intrigued her the most was whether he truly possessed the exceptional sword skills that were attributed to him. She pondered whether she would enjoy practicing with him. Suddenly, a group of noblewomen she knew approached her and inquired if she had come to see the Earl of Estero as well. Alter responded by expressing her disbelief in these rumors. One of the young girls then claimed that Alter's opinion would change once she laid eyes on the Count. According to her, he was not only handsome but possessed something more. With a mischievous challenge, the girl suggested that they go and see him together, especially since he had already arrived and was surrounded by a crowd. As Alter approached him, she noticed that he had his back turned and was engaged in conversation with someone else. The girl called out to him, and he turned around, revealing his striking youthful face and scarlet eyes. Alter couldn't help but be taken aback by his appearance. She couldn't fathom that such a handsome man could exist in this world. Setting down his wine glass, he introduced himself as Estero. Alter reciprocated by sharing her name as well. She wanted to invite him to practice sword fighting at her family estate, but she was so overwhelmed by his beauty that she forgot everything. She was at a loss, contemplating that if demons from fairy tales who seduced women truly existed, they would resemble him. She observed that if he grinned while looking at her, she would be prepared to make a solemn promise for the night. After standing in silence for a moment, the young man turned around and began to walk away. As he descended the stairs, he glanced back to see who was calling his name, but she averted her gaze and pretended it wasn't her. However, he was still approaching her. She realized that if their eyes met, she would be unable to utter a single word. She saw it all reflected in the same picture in the afterlife and remembered the expression on his face at that moment. She wondered if she was meant to be beneath him even after death, and she didn't recognize her significance to him. The next picture already depicted the events of the war that had commenced, and the girl in it was already a knight wielding a two-handed sword. Now she held the status of commander of the Empire's army. Just then, someone approached her with a report that the enemies had crossed the gully and cut off the army's food route, launching an attack from the rear. One of the generals objected, claiming that the report was nonsense because the gully was infested with demons, making it impossible for the enemy to have crossed it. The command was unaware of what had happened to the army's scouting party. The general suggested that the Earl of Herod utilize his magical powers to secure victory in this battle. He wanted the young earl to summon creatures from the mountains to track down the enemy. After all, he believed the count was a demon and therefore capable of such feats. In response to the general's statement, Alter tightly pressed her lips together and gave him a cold stare. The lord looked at her fearfully. She warned him that if he uttered another word, he would be court-martialed immediately. Suddenly, he was willing to give the general's proposal a try. Alter didn't understand what he meant by that. It was a risky venture. The young man explained that Lord Roses suggested forcing the creatures from the mountains to attack the enemy's rear while their army assembled an outing party consisting of knights of master rank or higher. He completes the plan by stating that once they pinpoint the enemy's location and give the signal, he will unleash those peculiar mystical creatures to attack. The general immediately dismisses the idea as absurd and impossible, claiming that no sane knight would ever agree to such a risky strategy. However, the commander notices that it was actually the Lord himself who proposed the plan, and now he seems uneasy. He averts his gaze, looking embarrassed, and explains that it was a slip of the tongue. He then goes on to stress the importance of the Empire's highest-ranking knights, emphasizing that they cannot be recklessly sent into such a dangerous battle. Altus suggests that if anyone has a better idea, she is open to hearing it, clearly confident in her own suggestions. The Lord decides to seek reinforcements from the Western Front, but the commander points out that they may not arrive in time. Alter asserts that their new plan will only succeed if no unexpected obstacles arise, emphasizing that this is their best and only chance. She turns to Count Estero, locking eyes with him confidently, and declares that she will lead a temporary squad to carry out the mission. Her voice exudes determination and leadership, leaving no room for doubt. As she finishes speaking, she catches a glimpse of blood-red eyes, momentarily unsettling her. To maintain her reputation as a strong leader, she quickly turns away and gives him the freedom to act as he sees fit. They agree to have all remaining units on the battlefield block the enemy's escape routes. As she reflects on these events, she realizes that this has always been her role, and she can't help but feel a sense of self-loathing. The memory weighs heavily on her, making it difficult to breathe. The image of Aneth, with his piercing red eyes, haunts her thoughts. When the girl was about to proceed to the next painting and immerse herself in her memories, she noticed a sudden sight before her. It was an intricately adorned and expensive door, reminiscent of those found in palaces. Then, the last memory appeared in front of her. She believed it was after the betrayal of Esso, when the prolonged war finally came to an end. Upon his return from the front, the emperor imprisoned him in a dungeon and subsequently sentenced him to execution. After the emperor's words, he transformed into a true demon. His eyes, as red as blood itself, emitted an evil glow. The palace was illuminated by flashes of lightning and thunder. The young man broke free from his restraints and slowly ascended into the air. Behind him, his mighty wings spread out like those of a demon, while beneath his feet, a sinister magical symbol emitted a red light, terrifying everything in its vicinity. Despite physically being present, his face displayed no emotion. He stood there, resembling a stone statue devoid of any hint of feeling or inner peace. His eyes appeared empty. Standing in front of the door, the girl pondered the invasion of the barbarians, the onslaught of the demons, and the collapse of the ruling class. After their country had endured it all, they only had to contemplate when they would lose. However, now it was within her power to bring it all to an end. Suddenly, she realized with a tinge of sadness in her heart that she couldn't forgive Ian. She reached for the door and opened it. The room was bathed in a golden light. The girl sadly contemplated that if there truly was a chance to live another life, one should pause and accept oneself as they truly are in their soul. She closed her eyes and confidently stepped forward into the mysterious golden glow on the other side of the doorway. Abruptly awakening, the girl found it peculiar because she believed that only hell awaited her after death. A little later, as she regained her senses, she noticed the scent of milk pudding and oatmeal cookies. She wondered where she was as she looked around in the morning sunlight, only to realize that she was lying in bed. As she lay there, she couldn't help but ponder the strangeness of everything. She couldn't comprehend why she found herself in this state. Suddenly, a maid's voice broke the silence, informing her that the master had requested her presence downstairs for breakfast. Confusion clouded her thoughts as she protested to the maid. While her mistress was away at war, she expected not only loyalty but also respect from the servants. However, the maid genuinely couldn't grasp the girl's words as she lay in bed. She inquired if her mistress had experienced a troubling dream. It was then that she noticed something peculiar. She didn't resemble herself. Her body had changed, her arms and hair were shorter, and she couldn't fathom why she felt so weak, as if her years of combat training had vanished. The maid grew frightened, suspecting that her mistress had injured herself during the night. A flicker of alarm flashed in her eyes as she hastily retreated, taken aback by her mistress's sudden outpouring of emotion. But then, a soft male voice broke the tension. The man expressed his understanding of why the girl was running late, attributing it to her tormenting the maid once again. He bid her a good morning. With his blonde hair and striking violet eyes, he exuded an unmistakable air of nobility and beauty, akin to a statue. It dawned on her that he was Rowan, and the leader of the noble faction, her own father. She couldn't fathom if she was delirious or being tested by demons. Suddenly, he suggested aloud that it could be the work of an Estero. However, her father was confused and questioned why it was related to the Estero. She remembered that her father, being the leader of the noble faction, had a strained relationship with the Empire's loyal Epson. But the dynamics between the families of the Black God Company had changed. Alter herself had become the eyes of her family, although it only appeared that way to her. Ain despised her so much that he decided to kill her. Yet, her father was perplexed. He sensed that something was amiss and demanded an explanation. Alter replied that she had merely dreamt of Inan. She thought any excuse would suffice. However, when her father pressed her again, she realized her mistake. At that time, she didn't even know his name. Yes, the social debut and the young man's name remained unknown to anyone. He didn't want anyone to know of his existence, so he kept it a secret. The girl nervously began to regret revealing that she dreamt of him. Little Alter couldn't possibly know about his existence. But her father gave her a stern look and mentioned rumors he had heard about the bastard of Estero being a demon. He was one of those demons that haunted people's nightmares. Then, her father embraced his astonished daughter and assured her not to worry. He held her tenderly, as if shielding her from the troubles of the world. He promised that she would never dream of that demon again, and he would take care of it. Upon hearing these reassurances, she suddenly felt the unwavering support and care of her loved ones in her life. After a while, they sat peacefully in the blossoming garden at the back of their mansion, in front of a table adorned with a variety of dishes. The young lady held a cup of tea in her hands and marveled at its delightful flavor. She savored the sweet taste of the black tea harvested from the mountains in the south. Suddenly, her father inquired if she liked the gift he had bestowed upon her. Caught off guard, she struggled to recall which gift he was referring to, but graciously replied that she appreciated all his gifts. Her father, however, noticed that she had not paid any attention to the doll or dress he had given her, leading him to believe she did not like any of the presents. With a grateful smile, the girl assured him that she truly cherished all the gifts he had given her. Her father expressed his gratitude for her kind words and remarked on how quickly children grow up, sometimes without parents even realizing it. He mentioned that he had come to this realization by observing her expression that day. The girl then complimented her father's beautiful eyes, but he failed to see the connection. Sensing the awkwardness, she swiftly changed the subject by inquiring about the situation with the immigrants. Her father's demeanor shifted as he sternly questioned her about referring to them as savages and pagans. Perplexed by his reaction, the girl suggested forming a specialized unit to deal with them, emphasizing the need for mobility along the front line. Before she could elaborate further, her father interrupted her, demanding to know where she had come across such ideas. Concerned by her father's sudden change in behavior, the girl was taken aback when he insinuated that someone had put a spell on her in her sleep. He decided to discuss the matter with Arson. The girl vehemently denied the accusation, insisting that it was not true.